The Chinook's rotors beat against the Nevada night like a mechanical heart, each rotation marking time in a war that never truly ended. The sound carried across the hospital parking lot, distant but distinct, a ghost from another life. Diana Maddox stood motionless in the supply closet doorway, her hands frozen mid-reach for a box of gauze, her eyes fixed on nothing, seeing everything. The sound faded. The helicopter was just life flight, probably carrying some drunk driver's latest victim to the trauma bay. Not her war, not her fight, not anymore. She was 58 years old, and she restocked bandages for minimum wage. Diana pulled the box down with steady hands. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their sterile glow across rows of medical supplies, organized with military precision. Every box faced forward, every label aligned, every shelf counted and inventoried. Order from chaos, the only kind of control she had left. Her name tag read, D. Maddox, Supply Services. No rank, no history, just another invisible worker in a system that had forgotten what invisible meant. The digital clock on the wall read 11:43 p.m., 17 minutes until midnight, 4 hours and 17 minutes until her shift ended. Then she would drive home to her empty apartment, heat up something that pretended to be food, and sit in the dark until it was time to come back and do it all again. This was what winning looked like. She pushed her cart into the hallway, its wheels squeaking against the polished floor. The sound echoed in the empty corridor. Third shift at Memorial Regional Hospital was a graveyard in more ways than one. The young doctors stayed away from night rotation when they could. The older nurses worked in silence, everyone just trying to get through to dawn. Diana's reflection caught in the darkened window as she passed. Gray streaks in dark hair pulled back tight, lines around her eyes that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with memory. She looked away. She always looked away. The trauma bay doors burst open ahead of her. Chaos poured into the hallway like water through a broken dam. 2 EMTs running full sprint, their gurney rattling between them. A young woman in scrubs sprinting alongside, one hand on the IV bag, the other trying to keep the patient's arm from falling off the side. Shouting, alarms, the controlled panic of people who knew they were losing. Diana stepped aside, pressing her cart against the wall. Invisible, always invisible. The patient flashed past, young, male, 19, maybe 20. His face was the color of old paper. His uniform, what was left of it, was Army combat fatigues, torn and soaked through with blood that looked black under the hallway lights. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, not seeing it. Diana knew that look. She had seen it on 100 faces in 100 different places. The look of someone standing at the edge of the dark, deciding whether to step forward or fall back. The gurney crashed through the trauma bay doors. The EMTs were already calling out vitals, their voices overlapping, urgent. Multiple GSWs, chest and abdomen. BP 60/40 and dropping. Lost his radial pulse 2 minutes ago. Respiratory rate 40, shallow, uneven. Diana should have walked away. Her job was supplies, not patients. Her role was restocking, not resuscitating. The terms of her employment were very clear about that. The terms of her entire existence for the last 11 years had been very clear about that. But her feet didn't move. Her hands gripped the cart handle, and her eyes tracked the controlled chaos through the trauma bay windows like a sniper acquiring targets. Inside, a young doctor stood at the head of the bed, her hands shaking as she tried to fit the laryngoscope blade. Dr. Elizabeth Turner, 32 years old, Harvard Medical School, top of her residency class, and absolutely, completely out of her depth. I need, someone get me, where's the... Turner's voice cracked mid-sentence. A resident tried to establish IV access and missed the vein. Once, twice, blood running down the patient's arm, mixing with all the other blood. "Somebody page the attending," Turner shouted. "Dr. Morrison's in surgery, won't be available for at least an hour," someone shouted back. "Then get me someone who can—" The monitor screamed. The patient was coding. Flatline. That terrible, endless tone that meant a heart had stopped doing the one thing hearts were supposed to do. "Start compressions!" Turner's voice went high, panicked. "Someone start compressions!" A young resident jumped forward and put his hands on the patient's chest. His rhythm was wrong, too fast, too shallow, bouncing instead of compressing, doing more harm than good. Diana could see it from 30 feet away through a window, and none of them inside the room could see it standing right next to the dying boy. Turner was calling for medications, but her voice had lost all authority. She was reading from a mental checklist, going through the motions, but there was no command in it, no certainty. Just a young doctor realizing that all those years of medical school had not prepared her for this moment, when the textbook answer was not enough and the patient was still dying. Diana's hands released the cart handle. She didn't remember making the decision. Her body just moved, the way it always had when someone needed saving. She walked through the trauma bay doors. Nobody noticed. They were too busy panicking, too busy shouting, too busy losing. She moved past a crash cart that someone had wheeled in, but nobody was using. Past a tray of intubation equipment scattered across a table. Past 3 nurses standing frozen, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. The resident was still doing compressions wrong. The patient's lips were turning blue. Turner was trying to place a central line with shaking hands. Diana reached the bedside. Her voice came out calm, measured. The voice she had used in Fallujah when the mortars were falling and the wounded were screaming and someone needed to be the one who didn't panic. "Step aside, doctor." Turner looked up. Her eyes were wide behind her surgical mask. "What? Who are—" Diana's voice changed, dropped lower, harder. The voice that had commanded soldiers under fire. The voice that had never learned to ask permission. "Step aside." Everyone in the room froze. That voice didn't belong in a civilian hospital. It belonged somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Somewhere most of these young doctors had only seen in movies. Turner stepped back. She didn't decide to. Her body just obeyed, responding to something older than protocol, deeper than rank. Diana took her place at the bedside. Her hands went to the patient's chest, replacing the resident's incompetent compressions. She didn't push him away. He just found himself standing 2 feet back, watching. Her first compression went deep. Perfect depth, perfect rhythm. 100 beats per minute exactly. Not from counting, from muscle memory that had been carved into her bones in places where counting was the difference between saving lives and filling body bags. "Wrong rhythm," she said, her voice calm again, almost conversational. "You're bouncing him, not compressing. Watch." Another compression. The patient's chest rose and fell in the right way now. Blood started moving. Not much, not enough, but something. Turner found her voice. "Who are you?" Diana didn't look at her. Her eyes were on the patient's face, watching for the small signs. Skin color, pupil dilation. The tiny movements that told the story of whether someone was coming back or slipping away. Doesn't matter. What matters is this soldier walked into an ambush, and you're about to let him die. A nurse spoke up, defensive. "We don't know it was an ambush. The report said training accident." "Look at the wound pattern." Diana's voice cut through the room like a scalpel. High entry angles, scattered grouping, incoming fire from elevated position. He's missing his plate carrier. They stripped his gear before they brought him in. This wasn't training, this was combat, and someone doesn't want you to know that. The room went silent except for the rhythm of compressions and the quiet beep of the monitor, still showing flatline, still screaming its electronic death song. Turner stared at Diana. "How do you possibly know that?" Diana didn't answer. She was counting in her head, calculating. The patient had been down too long. Brain damage was already happening. They were past the golden hour, past the silver hour, deep into the hours where survival was more curse than blessing. But she had saved people in worse shape, in worse places, with fewer resources and more people trying to kill her while she worked. "I need a 14-gauge angiocath," Diana said. "Second intercostal space, right side. He's got a tension pneumothorax and you're too scared to needle him." Turner's face went pale. I wasn't sure." "Now I'm sure. Get it." Someone put the needle in Diana's hand. She didn't look to see who. Her fingers found the landmark on the patient's chest by feel. Second rib, intercostal space. The spot where the lung had collapsed and was now crushing the heart, preventing it from filling, killing him with pressure instead of blood loss. She inserted the needle in one smooth motion. No hesitation, no doubt. Just the certainty of someone who had done this exact procedure 100 times in 100 places, where there was no time for hesitation and no room for doubt. The needle pierced through. There was a hiss, air escaping, pressure releasing, the sound of a life being given a second chance. The monitor changed its song. Still irregular, still too slow, but not flatline anymore. Not that terrible, endless tone. The heart was beating again. Weak, struggling, but beating. Diana stepped back. She stripped off the gloves that someone must have handed her, though she didn't remember taking them. Dropped them in the biohazard bin. Turned toward the door. "Wait," Turner started, but Diana was already walking away. Past the crash cart, past the tray of unused equipment, past the nurses who were staring at her like she had just performed a magic trick instead of a basic battlefield procedure. She retrieved her supply cart from the hallway. The wheels squeaked as she pushed it forward. The sound echoed. Normal. Mundane. Just another night shift worker doing her rounds. Behind her, in the trauma bay, they were stabilizing the patient, getting him ready for surgery, saving his life with the extra time Diana had bought them. None of them knew her name. None of them knew where she had come from. None of them knew what she was. Diana pushed her cart down the hallway toward the supply closet. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. On the outside, nothing had changed. She was still just D. Maddox, supply services, invisible and forgotten. But inside, something had shifted. Some door she had locked 11 years ago had been pushed open just a crack, and the light coming through burned. She made it to the supply closet before her hands started shaking. The break room at 6 a.m. was the same as it had been for the 11 years Diana had worked the night shift. Bad coffee, worse fluorescent lighting, a TV mounted in the corner playing the morning news on mute. Tables scattered around the room where the different tribes of hospital workers gathered to eat, gossip, and pretend they weren't exhausted. Diana sat alone at the corner table. She always sat alone. She had her lunch bag open in front of her, a sandwich she had made the night before, an apple that was starting to bruise, a bottle of water. The same meal she brought every shift because routine was control and control was survival. The news was showing footage from some protest somewhere. Young people holding signs, shouting at cameras. Diana didn't know what they were protesting and didn't care. She had learned a long time ago that the news was just noise, designed to make people angry about things they couldn't change. She had enough real things to be angry about without borrowing fictional ones from strangers. 3 young doctors came into the break room, fresh from their shift, still in scrubs, their voices carrying the particular kind of loud that came from people who thought they were the only ones in the room who mattered. Diana recognized one of them, Dr. James Patterson, 29 years old, orthopedic surgery resident, the kind of doctor who talked more than he listened and believed confidence was the same thing as competence. They got their coffee and sat at the table nearest the TV, directly in Diana's line of sight, whether she wanted them there or not. "Did you hear about the drama in the trauma bay last night?" Patterson said, his voice pitched to Carrie. Everything he said was pitched to Carrie. He lived his life like he was always on stage. The GSW case? Yeah, Turner was running it, right? Another doctor. Younger. Diana didn't know his name. Running it is generous. She was drowning, until that old supply lady walked in and took over. Diana kept eating her sandwich, chewing slowly, not looking up. Wait, what? The third doctor leaned forward. A supply clerk took over a trauma? Apparently, Maddox, the old woman who stocks the closets, she just walked in and started giving orders, did a needle decompression, saved the kid's life. Are you serious? Did someone report her? That's completely outside her scope. She could get the hospital sued. Diana took a bite of her apple. The bruised part, it tasted like the rest of her life, slightly rotten, but still edible. Patterson laughed. It was not a kind sound. Turner actually filed a report praising her, said Maddox knew exactly what she was doing. Like that makes it okay. Jesus, these old-timers, I swear. They all think they're heroes from some war movie. Newsflash, Grandma, this is modern medicine. We have protocols for a reason. Seriously, these dinosaurs are liabilities. One wrong move and we're all paying for it. The hospital needs to clean house. Get rid of the dead weight. Diana finished her apple. Core and all. Waste was a sin she had learned not to commit. She stood up, gathered her lunch bag, threw away her trash. The doctors didn't look at her. They never did. She was just furniture, just another piece of the scenery in their important young lives. She walked past their table toward the door. Patterson's voice followed her. I mean, how hard is it to understand? You stock supplies, that's literally the whole job. Just put boxes on shelves and stay out of the way. Diana's hand touched the door handle. She paused. 1 second, 2. Her jaw tightened. The muscles in her shoulders tensed. Then she released the handle, pushed through the door, and walked out. Her limp was more pronounced now. The old shrapnel wound in her hip always acted up after a long shift. After 11 years on the night shift, she had learned to stop noticing the pain. It was just part of the background noise. Like the doctor's voices, like the fluorescent lights, like everything else she had learned to endure. She made it to the parking lot before Emily Bradford caught up with her. Ms. Maddox, wait! Emily was 24, blonde, perpetually cheerful in the way that people who had never seen real darkness could be. She was a good nurse, competent, caring, and she looked at Diana with the kind of respect that made Diana uncomfortable because she didn't know what to do with it. Ms. Maddox, that was incredible last night. Diana kept walking toward her truck, an old Ford F-150 that was older than Emily and just as weathered. Just instinct, Emily. Nothing special. Nothing special? You saved that soldier's life. Dr. Turner was about to lose him and you knew exactly what to do. Where did you learn to do that? Diana reached her truck and pulled out her keys. They jangled in her hand. The keychain was a small metal Ranger tab, tarnished and worn from years of being carried in pockets and bags. Most people didn't recognize what it was. Emily didn't recognize it. Emergency medicine is emergency medicine, Emily. Same principles everywhere. But the way you moved, the way you took command, Dr. Turner said you sounded like you'd been in combat. Have you? Been in combat, I mean? Diana opened the truck door. The hinge creaked. Everything on the truck creaked. It was held together by duct tape, determination, and the refusal to give up on things just because they were old. That was a long time ago, Emily. Different life. But Maddox, the voice came from behind them. Male, authoritative, the kind of voice that was used to being obeyed. Diana turned. David Lancaster stood 20 feet away, his suit already perfect despite the early hour. 48 years old, MBA from Yale, hospital administrator, the kind of man who saw everything in terms of profit margins and liability exposure. He held a tablet in one hand and had the expression of someone who was about to deliver bad news and didn't care that it was bad. My office. Now. Emily looked between them, her face worried. "Mr. Lancaster, Miss Maddox just finished a 12-hour shift." "Now, Maddox." Diana closed her truck door without getting in. She nodded to Emily. "It's fine. Go home, Emily. Get some sleep." She walked past Lancaster toward the hospital entrance. He fell into step beside her, not quite walking with her, more like escorting a prisoner. They didn't speak. There was nothing to say yet. Whatever he was going to say, he would say it in his office, behind his desk, where he had home field advantage and the power dynamic was clear. The walk through the hospital felt longer than it was. Past the emergency room where the patient she had saved was probably already in surgery. Past the nurse's station where the night shift was giving report to the day shift. Past the supply closet where her cart still sat, half full of inventory she hadn't finished restocking. Lancaster's office was on the third floor. Executive suite. The door had his name on it in brass letters. The carpet was thick. The furniture was expensive. Everything about it screamed money and power, and the kind of importance that came from never having done anything actually important. He gestured to a chair in front of his desk. Diana remained standing. Lancaster sighed. "Sit down, Diana." "I'm fine standing, sir." It wasn't a request. Diana sat, not because he told her to, because picking that particular battle would accomplish nothing. She had learned to choose her battles carefully, save her ammunition for fights that mattered. Lancaster sat behind his desk. He placed his tablet down with deliberate care, folded his hands on top of it, looked at Diana with the expression of a man who had rehearsed this conversation. "Last night, the trauma bay, Dr. Turner filed a report." Diana said nothing. "She said you intervened in an active resuscitation, that you performed a needle decompression, that you took command of the situation and gave medical orders to licensed physicians." Diana still said nothing. Silence was a weapon she knew how to use. "Do you deny this happened?" "No, sir, it happened." "Do you understand that you are not licensed to perform advanced procedures in this facility?" "I'm a registered nurse with combat trauma certifications. I'm licensed to—" "As a nurse, Diana, not as a trauma surgeon, not as an emergency physician. Your job in this hospital is supply services. You stock shelves. You inventory equipment. That is the full extent of your role." Diana's jaw tightened. A soldier was dying. "And you are not a soldier anymore." Lancaster leaned forward. "Let me be very direct with you. You are 58 years old. You work part-time on the night shift. You do not fit the demographic this hospital is trying to cultivate." Demographic. The board wants younger staff, people who are tech-savvy, people who are comfortable with social media, with patient engagement initiatives, with modern healthcare delivery. You barely know how to use the computer inventory system. "I do my job." "Your job is what I tell you it is." Lancaster's voice hardened. "And right now, your job is to stay in your lane. Stock supplies. Don't touch patients. Don't give medical advice. Don't play hero. One more incident like last night and I will have grounds to terminate your employment. Are we clear?" Diana looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had never bled for anything, who had never held the pieces of another human being together with his bare hands while mortars fell around him, who had never had to choose between following orders and doing what was right. This man who thought power came from a title and respect came from a business degree. She could break him in 30 seconds. Physically, that wasn't even a question. But that wasn't how this world worked. This world had different rules, different battles, different ways of breaking people. "Crystal clear, sir." "Good." Lancaster leaned back, satisfied. "You're dismissed." Diana stood. She walked to the door. Her hand touched the handle. "Diana." She paused but didn't turn around. "I know you used to be military. I know you probably think that makes you special. But this is the civilian world. Things are different here. The sooner you accept that you're not a soldier anymore, the easier your life will be." Diana opened the door and walked out without responding. Because responding would have required words. And the words in her head were not the kind she could say to a civilian administrator without consequences. She made it to her truck before the anger hit. Not the hot anger, the cold kind. The kind that settled in her chest like ice and made her hands shake. Not from fear, from the effort of not going back inside and showing Lancaster exactly what a soldier looked like when you push them too far. She sat in the driver's seat, gripped the steering wheel, counted her breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The breathing technique they taught in the Army for controlling stress responses. She had been using it for 30 years, and it still worked, mostly. Her phone buzzed, a text message. She pulled it out of her pocket. The message was from Hawk, Marcus Brennan, her oldest friend, the only person left from the old days who still called her by her real name instead of pretending she was someone else. Coffee? Via hospital, 1100 hours. Diana checked the time. It was 6:45 a.m. She had 4 hours, enough time to go home, take a shower, pretend to sleep, fail at sleeping, give up, and go meet Hawk. She texted back one word, Roger. Then she started her truck and drove home through the morning traffic. Just another invisible old woman in an invisible old truck, carrying invisible scars that no one wanted to see and no one wanted to know about. The civilian world, Lancaster had said, things are different here. He was right. Things were different. In the civilian world, they let soldiers die in hospitals while administrators worried about liability. In the civilian world, experience was a liability instead of an asset. In the civilian world, Diana Maddox was just a supply clerk, not a warrior, not a protector, not anything that mattered. She had accepted that. For 11 years, she had accepted it. But somewhere in the back of her mind, in the place where old instincts lived and old training waited, something was stirring. Some part of her that had never stopped being a soldier, no matter how many years she spent pretending otherwise. The civilian world might have different rules, but those rules had just let a young soldier almost die on a hospital bed while trained doctors stood around and panicked. Diana drove home through the morning light and wondered how much longer she could keep pretending that was acceptable. How much longer she could keep being invisible. How much longer she could keep being someone she wasn't. The answer, though she didn't know it yet, was less than 12 hours. Diana's apartment was small, studio layout, 400 square feet of carefully maintained emptiness. The furniture was minimal and functional. A bed that was always made with military corners, a table with one chair, a kitchenette with dishes for one. Everything clean, everything ordered, everything designed for a life that required nothing and expected less. The only decoration was the mantel above the electric fireplace she never used. 5 photographs in simple frames, arranged with the same precision she brought to everything else. The first photo showed a younger Diana in dress uniform, standing beside a man in army fatigues. Her wedding day, 1995. She was 28, he was 30. Both of them smiling with the kind of certainty that came from not knowing what the future actually held. His name was Marcus Maddox. No relation to Hawk, though the similarity in first names had been a running joke for years. He had been a good man, a good husband, a good soldier, until Iraq broke something inside him that could not be fixed. The second photo was from his funeral, 2021, 4 years ago. Diana in black, standing beside a flag-draped coffin, her face empty of everything except the kind of grief that had moved past tears into something colder and more permanent. The official cause of death was suicide. The real cause was a war that had ended a decade earlier, but had never stopped killing. The third photo showed a young woman in officer's uniform, Lieutenant Sarah Maddox, Diana's daughter, 32 years old now, currently deployed somewhere Diana was not allowed to know. They texted occasionally, brief messages, "I'm fine, stay safe." The kind of communication that happened between people who loved each other, but had learned that love was not the same thing as understanding. The fourth photo was a ranger team. 1991, Diana was 24, The only woman in a unit of 12. Half of them were dead now. 3 from combat, 2 from suicide, 1 from cancer caused by burn pit exposure. The survivors were scattered across the country, most of them broken in ways that never showed up on medical examinations. The 5th photo was the hardest to look at. Iraq, 2004. Diana and her husband together during one of the rare moments when their deployments overlapped. Both in combat gear, both exhausted, both still believing they were fighting for something that mattered. The photo had been taken 6 months before Marcus's mind started coming apart. Before the nightmares got so bad he stopped sleeping. Before the anger got so bad he stopped being safe to be around. Before Diana had to choose between being his wife and keeping their daughter safe from a man who was turning into someone else. She had chosen their daughter. It was the right choice. It was the only choice. But Marcus had never forgiven her for it, and Diana had never forgiven herself for making him need forgiveness. She stood in front of the mantel for a long time, still wearing her hospital scrubs, her hair still damp from the shower that had failed to wash away the feeling of Lancaster's office. The anger had faded. It always did. Anger was a luxury she could not afford. Anger made you stupid, made you careless, made you forget that battles were won by people who kept their heads while everyone else was losing theirs. But underneath the anger was something else, something older. The feeling she got when a mission was about to start. When the helicopter rotors were spinning up and the team was loading gear and everyone knew that in a few hours, some of them might be dead. That mixture of dread and anticipation and the strange, terrible certainty that this was what she had been built for. She had not felt that feeling in 11 years. She had not wanted to feel it. She had spent 11 years building a life where that feeling had no place and no purpose. But it was back now, coiled in her chest like a snake waiting to strike. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She picked it up. Another text from Hawk. "Running late. Make it 11:30. Diana texted back. "Copy." She had 2 hours. She should try to sleep. The night shift had been 12 hours, and she had another shift tonight. Sleep was a tactical necessity. Rest when you can, fight when you must. Basic infantry training. She lay down on her bed, still in her scrubs, and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that let thoughts creep in. Memories, regrets, the faces of people she had saved and people she had lost, and the vast, uncounted number of people she had never known about who had lived or died because of decisions she made in the space between heartbeats. She did not sleep. At 11:15 she got up, changed into jeans and a plain t-shirt, and drove across town to the VA hospital. The Veterans Affairs Medical Center was in the old part of the city, surrounded by buildings that had seen better decades. The hospital itself was a sprawling complex of connected structures built in different eras with different budgets and different levels of competence. Parts of it were modern. Parts of it looked like they were held together with prayer and spite. Diana had been volunteering here every week for the past 4 years, teaching young medics, helping with physical therapy, sitting with the old veterans who had no family left, and no visitors and no one to remember that they had once been young and strong and certain of their purpose. The parking lot was half empty. It was always half empty. The VA was chronically underfunded, chronically understaffed, and chronically ignored by everyone except the people who needed it, which was fine with Diana. She preferred being ignored. She found Hawk in the cafeteria, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee already waiting. He was 60 years old, gray hair cut military short, face weathered by sun and wind, and 30 years of carrying things heavier than equipment. He wore jeans and a faded Ranger Regiment t-shirt and a watch that had stopped working in 1993, but that he still wore because it had been a gift from someone who mattered. Marcus Brennan, call sign Hawk, the best combat medic Diana had ever worked with, and the only person alive who knew all her stories and still wanted to have coffee with her. He looked up as she approached, his face split into a grin. Sister. Diana sat down across from him, picked up her coffee, black, no sugar, the way she had been drinking it for 30 years. Brother. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Around them, the cafeteria was nearly empty, a few nurses on break, an elderly veteran in a wheelchair eating lunch alone. The quiet background hum of a place that existed for people who had been forgotten by everyone except each other. Hawk studied her face. You look like hell. Feel like it too. Heard you had an exciting night. Diana's hand paused halfway to her mouth, coffee cup suspended. She set it down carefully. How do you know about that? Hawk's grin widened. Kid you saved last night? Private Jackson Cole. He's Ranger qualified. 27th Infantry Regiment. Word travels fast in the community when someone with the look saves one of ours. The look. You know what I mean. The look that says you've been in the shit and came out the other side. Cole said the second he saw your eyes, he knew. Said you moved like a Ranger, talked like a Ranger, saved his life like a Ranger. So I made some calls, confirmed what I already suspected. Diana wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. The heat seeped through the cardboard. What did you suspect? That Diana Maddox, supply services clerk at Memorial Regional Hospital, is also Diana Maddox, former staff sergeant, 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 combat deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, 1 Purple Heart, and a reputation for being the best damn combat medic the Rangers ever had until they decided you were too good at your job. Diana said nothing. Silence was admission enough. Hawk leaned forward. His voice dropped, not in volume but in tone, the shift from casual to serious, from friend to soldier. Why didn't you tell them who you are? What's the point? War's over. We're relics. Let them figure it out themselves. Or let them bury you in a supply closet until you forget how to fight. Diana looked at him, really looked at him, saw the same thing she saw every time she looked in a mirror. Someone who had been built for a purpose, and then told that purpose no longer mattered. Someone who had skills that could save lives, but was not allowed to use them because using them required admitting what they were. I haven't forgotten how to fight, Hawk. I've just learned when not to. And last night? Last night was an exception. Was it? Hawk sat back. Or was it a reminder that you can pretend to be a supply clerk all you want, but the second someone needs saving, you stop pretending. You can't help it, Di. It's who you are. It's who we all are. Diana drank her coffee. It was bitter and lukewarm and tasted like every other cup of coffee she had drunk in every other military facility in every other country. The taste of home for people whose home was always somewhere else. The administrator called me into his office this morning, told me I was a liability, told me to stay in my lane or get fired, told me I'm not a soldier anymore. He's right about the last part. You're not a soldier. You're a ranger. There's a difference. Diana almost smiled. Almost. Pretty sure the Army would disagree with that distinction. The Army's opinion stopped mattering the second they put you in a supply closet and told you to shut up. You know what matters? That kid is alive because you ignored orders and did what needed doing. How many people can say that? How many people have the skill, the training, the pure goddamn competence to look at chaos and turn it into order? Not many, Di. Not many at all. And the world wants to put you in a closet and tell you you're too old to matter. Diana set down her coffee cup. I am too old to matter, Hawk. I'm 58. My hip hurts every morning. I need reading glasses. I get tired after 12-hour shifts. I'm not who I used to be. Bullshit. You're exactly who you used to be. You're just older. And older means experienced. Older means you've seen enough shit to know what matters and what doesn't. Older means you don't panic when the young doctors lose their minds because you've been in situations 1,000 times worse and survived. Hawk reached across the table and put his hand over hers. The gesture was unusual for him. Physical contact was not something their generation did easily, not with each other. Touch meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant weakness, and weakness meant death. But sometimes the old rules needed to be broken. Listen to me, sister. You saved that kid's life last night, not because you're young or tech-savvy or whatever bullshit that administrator values. You saved him because you're a ranger. Because rangers don't quit, don't surrender, don't leave people behind. And that's never going to change, no matter how many years pass or how many people tell you you're obsolete. Diana looked down at their hands, hers scarred from 100 small injuries, his scarred from 100 more. The hands of people who had spent their lives fixing broken things and breaking things that needed to be fixed. What if he's right, she said quietly. What if I am obsolete? What if the world has moved on and people like us don't fit anymore? Then the world's wrong, and it's our job to remind them why. Diana pulled her hand back gently. I'm tired, Hawk. I'm so damn tired of fighting, of proving myself, of being invisible until someone needs something and then being told to be invisible again. I just want peace. Peace is for people who never went to war. People like us, we don't get peace, we get purpose. And your purpose is keeping people alive. That's what you do. That's what you've always done. And some supply closet administrator doesn't get to take that away from you just because it makes him uncomfortable. Diana's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket. Unknown number. She stared at the screen, her combat instincts flaring to life before her conscious mind caught up. Unknown numbers meant trouble. Always had, always would. She answered. Maddox. The voice on the other end was male, older, carrying the unmistakable weight of command. Staff Sergeant Maddox, this is Colonel Robert Hayes, Joint Special Operations Command. Diana went very still. Every muscle in her body locked into attention, even though she was sitting down in a cafeteria chair. Some responses were too deeply ingrained to ever fully go away. I'm retired, sir. I'm aware, but we have a situation. Private Jackson Cole, the soldier you saved last night, he was part of a classified operation, an operation that went very wrong, and we think someone on the inside made it go wrong. Diana's free hand curled into a fist on the table. Across from her, Hawk saw the change in her posture, saw the shift from tired civilian to alert operator. His eyes narrowed. Why are you telling me this, sir? Because someone just tried to kill Private Cole. Again, in his hospital room, 30 minutes ago. He's alive only because a nurse walked in at the wrong time, or the right time, depending on your perspective. Diana's jaw tightened. How? Succinylcholine, injected directly into his IV port, untraceable if it works, causes paralysis, respiratory failure, cardiac arrest. Looks like natural complications from his injuries, except the nurse interrupted before the full dose could be administered. We have Cole in protective custody now, but he's refusing to cooperate with our medical staff. Why? Colonel Hayes paused. Diana could hear voices in the background. Equipment. The sounds of a tactical operations center spinning up for a mission. When Hayes spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. He says he'll only talk to the woman who saved him. Says she's Ranger qualified. Says she has the look. Says anyone who can do what you did in that trauma bay is someone who understands what's really happening here. Diana closed her eyes. She had known. The second she saw Cole's wounds, she had known this was not a simple training accident. The pattern was wrong. The story was wrong. Everything about it screamed cover-up. Sir, I haven't been in the field in over a decade. I'm not cleared for... I don't need you in the field, Staff Sergeant. I need you to keep Private Cole alive while we figure out who's trying to kill him and why. This is off book. The hospital can't know. Your administrator can't know. No official records, no paper trail. Just you, Cole, in a safe location until we sort this out. Diana opened her eyes. Hawk was watching her intently. He could only hear her side of the conversation, but he had spent enough years in the same world to read between the words. He knew what kind of call this was. What's Cole's status now? Stable but scared. He knows someone inside tried to kill him. He knows we can't trust normal channels. He needs someone who can protect him and keep him alive. Someone with medical training and tactical awareness. Someone who won't panic when things go sideways. Things are already sideways, sir. They're about to get worse. Cole is a high-value witness in a case that goes way beyond a botched training exercise. If he lives to testify, a lot of very powerful people go to prison. If he dies, the whole thing disappears. We need him alive. And he needs you. Diana looked at Hawk. He gave her the smallest nod, the kind of nod that said he already knew what she was going to say, and he supported it, even though it was probably a terrible idea. She looked at her hands, steady hands, capable hands, hands that had saved hundreds of lives and taken dozens more when saving lives required it. Hands that for 11 years had done nothing more important than stocking supply shelves and inventorying bandages. Lancaster's voice echoed in her memory. You're not a soldier anymore. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was not a soldier. But she was still a ranger. And rangers did not leave people behind. When do I start, sir? Hayes's relief was audible, even over the phone. Immediately. I'm sending you coordinates for a secure location. You'll need to be there in 2 hours. Bring whatever medical supplies you think you'll need. This is not a hospital. It's a safe house. Resources will be limited. Understood. What's my cover story? You don't have one. As far as your employer knows, you left after your shift and went home. You're not scheduled to work again until tomorrow night. That gives us 36 hours to figure this out before anyone notices you're missing. Diana almost laughed. The idea that anyone would notice she was missing was generous. Roger that, sir. Send the coordinates. One more thing, Maddox. Cole's wounds. What you saw in that trauma bay, that was not the whole story. There's something else going on here. Something bigger. And if you take this assignment, you're going to end up in the middle of it. I'm already in the middle of it, sir. I just didn't know it until now. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Rangers lead the way, Staff Sergeant. All the way, sir. The call ended. Diana set her phone down on the table. Her coffee had gone cold. The cafeteria around her continued its quiet routine, oblivious to the fact that her entire life had just changed direction in the span of a 5-minute phone call. Hawk leaned forward. Well, I need to borrow your truck and your go bag. Someone tried to kill Cole inside a hospital with military-grade drugs. This is not random. This is not opportunistic. This is planned, organized, someone with access and knowledge and resources. Hawk's expression darkened. How deep does this go? Don't know yet, but deep enough that JSOC is calling retired medics for off-book protection duty. Deep enough that they don't trust normal channels. You're walking into something bad. I walked into something bad the second I saved that kid's life. Now I'm just following through. Hawk pulled his keys from his pocket and slid them across the table. Truck's in the north lot. Go bag is behind the driver's seat. Extra magazines in the side compartment. Med supplies in the back. Everything you need for a very bad day. Diana took the keys. Thank you. Don't thank me, just come back. I already lost too many friends to stupid wars. I'm not losing you to a stupid conspiracy. Diana stood. Hawk stood with her. For a moment they just looked at each other. Two old soldiers who had survived everything the world threw at them and were about to walk back into the fire one more time. Hawk held out his hand. Diana shook it. His grip was firm, certain. The handshake of people who trusted each other with things more important than their lives. Once a ranger, Hawk said. Always a ranger, Diana finished. She turned and walked out of the cafeteria, through the VA hospital corridors, past the old veterans and the young staff, and all the ordinary people living ordinary lives who would never know that something extraordinary was about to happen in the shadows just beyond their awareness. Hawk's truck was exactly where he said it would be. Black Ford F-250, modified suspension, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that looks civilian but had been prepared for situations that were anything but. The go bag was behind the driver's seat, a tactical backpack that was heavier than it looked and contained everything from medical supplies to ammunition to emergency cash. Diana got in, started the engine, and checked her phone. The coordinates Hayes had sent pointed to an address on the outskirts of the city, an abandoned section of the old VA hospital complex. Buildings that had been shut down years ago due to budget cuts and never reopened. The perfect place to hide someone who needed to stay hidden. She programmed the GPS and started driving. Her hands were steady on the wheel. Her breathing was calm. Her mind was already shifting into mission mode, cataloging threats, planning contingencies, preparing for the 100 different ways this could go wrong. Lancaster had told her she was not a soldier anymore. He was right. She was something worse. She was a soldier who had been told to stop being a soldier and had spent 11 years pretending that was possible. But pretending was over now. Someone had tried to kill one of her own. Someone with power and resources and the arrogance to think they could get away with it. Diana Maddox had spent 11 years being invisible, being quiet, being harmless. That was about to change. The drive took 40 minutes through traffic that was lighter than usual. Diana spent the time mentally inventorying the go bag without actually opening it. She knew what Hawk would pack. They had served together long enough that their loadouts were nearly identical. Medical supplies prioritized for trauma, hemostatic gauze, combat tourniquets, chest seals, airway equipment, pain medication, antibiotics, IV supplies. Everything you needed to keep someone alive when proper medical care was miles away and death was measured in minutes. The weapons would be there too. Sidearm, probably a Glock 19, extra magazines, possibly a compact rifle broken down and stowed. Hawk was thorough, always had been. The GPS led her to the old VA complex. Chain-link fence with a gate that should have been locked, but wasn't. Buildings with boarded windows and faded paint. Weeds growing through cracked concrete. The whole place had the feeling of institutional abandonment, the kind of place where important things were once done and then forgotten when the money ran out. A black SUV was parked near the easternmost building. Government plates. 2 men in civilian clothes standing outside. Security. They tracked Diana's approach with professional alertness, but did not raise weapons. Someone had told them she was coming. Diana parked next to the SUV and got out. The taller of the 2 men stepped forward. Military bearing. Early 30s. The kind of fit that came from daily PT and regular combat deployments. Maddox? That's me. He nodded toward the building. Cole's inside, 2nd floor, room 203. Medical supplies are staged there. Colonel Hayes said to tell you he'll check in every 4 hours. If you need anything, use the sat phone in the room. Do not use your cell. Do not call anyone. Do not leave unless the building is actively on fire. Understood. What's the threat assessment? Unknown actors with military training and inside knowledge. They got to Cole once in a secure hospital. They'll try again. Our job is to keep them from finding this location. Your job is to keep Cole alive if they do. Diana slung the go bag over her shoulder. How long am I on duty? Until we figure out who's trying to kill him and why. Could be 12 hours, could be 3 days. Hayes said you'd understand. Diana understood. This was a holding action. Keep the asset alive while the people with authority and clearance did the actual investigation. Her role was not to solve the problem. Her role was to prevent the problem from killing the witness. She had done worse jobs in worse places. I'll need a threat brief, everything you know about what happened. The security officer pulled out a tablet and handed it to her. It's all in there, classified, so don't let it leave this building. Short version? Cole was part of a 4-man team running what was supposed to be a routine transport operation. Documents from one secure facility to another. Milk run, training exercise. Except someone changed the route coordinates, sent them into an ambush. 3 KIA. Cole survived because he's a lucky bastard. Now someone wants to make sure his luck runs out. Diana took the tablet. What kind of documents? Above my clearance, above yours too, probably, but important enough that people are willing to kill to keep them from getting where they're supposed to go. Diana nodded. I'll take it from here. She walked into the building. The interior was exactly what she expected. Institutional decay, peeling paint, water stains on the ceiling, the smell of mildew and abandonment. But the bones were solid. The structure was sound, and someone had recently swept and cleared the main hallway, removing the worst of the debris. The stairs to the second floor creaked under her weight. Old wood, poor maintenance, but functional. Room 203 was at the end of the hallway. The door was closed. Diana knocked twice. Cole, it's Maddox. I'm coming in. She opened the door slowly, giving the occupant time to see her, to recognize her, to not shoot her out of panic. The room beyond was small. Hospital bed, monitoring equipment, IV stand, medical supplies stacked on a table, and sitting on the bed, looking young and scared and pale, was Private Jackson Cole. Brown hair, blue eyes, the earnest expression of someone who'd enlisted believing in something bigger than himself. His right arm was in a sling. Bandages covered his chest and abdomen. IV line running into his left arm. Oxygen cannula in his nose. He looked like he had been through hell and barely made it back. When he saw Diana, his entire body relaxed. The tension in his shoulders eased. His breathing steadied. The look of pure relief on his face was painful to see. "You came," he said. His voice was rough, tired. The voice of someone who had been screaming and had not stopped long enough for his throat to heal. Rangers don't leave rangers behind, Cole. You should know that. I wasn't sure you were really a ranger. I thought maybe I imagined it. The way you moved, the way you talked. I thought maybe it was the blood loss making me see things. Diana set the go bag down and approached the bed. She moved slowly, deliberately, giving him time to adjust to her presence. Combat trauma did strange things to people, made them jumpy, paranoid, unable to trust even the people trying to help. I'm a ranger, was a ranger, been out for a while now, but some things you don't forget. She reached for his wrist, felt his pulse. Fast but steady. His skin was warm but not feverish. His color was better than it had been in the trauma bay, but still too pale. He was healing, but slowly. The kind of injuries that would take weeks to fully recover from, assuming he lived that long. Tell me about the shooter, the one in the hospital. Cole's jaw tightened. I didn't see him. I woke up and I felt wrong, like something was off. I couldn't move my right arm, but that's normal with the injury. But then I couldn't move my left arm either. And my breathing felt weird, heavy, like I was trying to breathe through water. Paralytic drugs, Diana said. They cause muscle paralysis. Respiratory muscles stop working. Heart keeps beating for a while, but eventually it fails too. Looks like natural complications from trauma. I hit the call button. My finger barely worked, but I hit it. The nurse came in, and I tried to tell her something was wrong, but I couldn't talk. She saw something move near my IV, someone running out of the room. She screamed. Other people came. They found the syringe in my IV port. Diana examined the IV site on his arm. Fresh dressing, no signs of infection. Whoever had tried to kill him had known exactly what they were doing. Military medical training, knowledge of hospital protocols, access to controlled substances. The ambush, Diana said. Tell me about it. Cole's eyes went distant. The 1,000-yard stare, the look of someone reliving something they could never forget. We were told it was a training exercise. Transport classified documents from Fort Carson to Peterson Air Force Base. Simple route. 4 of us. Martinez was driving. Thompson had navigation. Reeves was security. I was in the back with the documents. He paused, swallowed hard, continued. We were halfway there when Thompson said something was wrong. The GPS coordinates didn't match the approved route. We were heading into the mountains instead of staying on the main highway. Martinez said maybe it was a test, to see if we'd notice, to see if we'd abort. So we kept going. Diana already knew where this was going. She had heard variations of this story too many times. Training exercise that was not a training exercise. Orders that led people into traps. The kind of mistakes that were not mistakes at all, but carefully planned murders disguised as incompetence. The road got narrower, trees on both sides, nowhere to turn around. And then we hit the choke point, fallen tree blocking the road. Martinez stopped. Thompson got out to check if we could move it, and that's when they opened fire. Cole's hands were shaking now. Diana reached out and took his left hand in hers, held it firmly, grounding him, bringing him back from the memory to the present. How many shooters? I don't know, at least 3, maybe more. High ground on both sides. They had us in a perfect kill box. Martinez died in the first 5 seconds. Headshot through the windshield. Thompson made it maybe 10 seconds. Tried to get back to the vehicle. Didn't make it. And Reeves? Reeves was Special Forces. Combat veteran. He got out, returned fire, tried to get to me. Told me to stay down. Told me to protect the documents. I heard him fighting. Heard him shooting. Then I heard him scream. Then I didn't hear anything. Cole's voice broke. Diana squeezed his hand. How did you survive? I played dead. Lay there in my own blood and Martinez's blood and didn't move. They came down to check. I heard boots. Heard voices. Someone said, "Get the documents." Someone else said, "What about this one?" And then someone, I don't know who, said, "Leave him. He's already dead." They took the documents, took our weapons, took our radios, stripped Martinez's and Thompson's bodies of gear, and then they left. How long before someone found you? I don't know. Hours. I passed out, woke up in the helicopter, then woke up again in the trauma bay with you standing over me, telling some doctor to step aside. Diana released his hand and sat back, processing, analyzing, building a picture in her mind of what had happened and why. Cole, what was in those documents? I don't know, above my clearance. We were just supposed to transport them. But you must have some idea. Otherwise, why try to kill you after the fact? You're a witness, but a witness to what? An ambush? That happens. People get killed. Equipment gets lost. None of that requires silencing the survivor unless the survivor knows something that matters. Cole looked at her, young eyes, old fear. There was something else. Tell me. Before we left, I saw the documents being loaded. They were in a briefcase, handcuffed to a courier. But when they loaded them into our vehicle, the briefcase was open. The courier was upset. He was arguing with our commanding officer, saying this wasn't protocol, saying the documents should never be transported without proper chain of custody. The officer told him to shut up and follow orders. Diana felt something cold settle in her stomach. What officer? General Nathaniel Stone. He personally signed off on our transport orders. The name hit Diana like a physical blow. She kept her face neutral. Stone. Nathaniel Stone. The name was familiar, too familiar, but from where? Gulf War? Iraq? The memories were fragmentary, buried under years of trying to forget. She would need to call Hayes, pull Stone's complete service record, figure out why that name made something cold settle in her stomach. Diana stood and walked to the window, looked out at the abandoned buildings, the overgrown parking lot, the chain-link fence that was supposed to keep people out, but would not stop anyone who was serious about getting in. Cole, I need you to understand something. The people who did this, they're not going to stop. They got to you once in a hospital, surrounded by security and cameras and witnesses. They'll get to you again if they find you. My job is to make sure they don't find you. But if they do, I need to know you can follow orders. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. I work for a living. Call me Maddox or call me Diana, but not ma'am. Cole almost smiled. Yes, Maddox. Diana turned back to face him. Get some rest. I'm going to set up a perimeter and run some diagnostics on your wounds. When you wake up, we'll go over the protocol for if things go sideways. You think they'll find us? Diana looked at him. 19 years old, barely old enough to drink, already scarred by things that would follow him for the rest of his life. She could lie to him, tell him everything would be fine, that he was safe, that the bad people would not find him. But Rangers did not lie to each other. Yes, she said, eventually they'll find us. But by the time they do, we'll be ready. Now get some rest. That's an order. Cole nodded and closed his eyes. Within minutes, his breathing had evened out. Sleep or exhaustion or drugs. Probably all three. Diana pulled out the sat phone and dialed the number Hayes had given her. He answered on the first ring. Maddox, sit rep. Cole is stable, scared but coherent. I need you to pull everything you have on General Nathaniel Stone. Gulf War veteran. Last I heard, he retired in 2015. I need to know what he's been doing since then. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Why Stone? Because he signed the orders that sent Cole's team into that ambush, and because something about that name is setting off every alarm bell I have. What kind of history? That's what I'm trying to figure out, sir. Just pull the file. I have a feeling once I see it, I'll remember why his name matters. The sat phone call with Colonel Hayes lasted 20 minutes. Diana stood by the window while Cole slept, her voice low and controlled, as Hayes briefed her on what they'd found. The words came through clear and cold, painting a picture Diana had hoped she'd never see again. Hayes didn't interrupt with questions. He just delivered the intel, systematic and thorough. When he finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jesus, Hayes finally said. You're sure about the connection? I'll be sure once I see his service photo, but the timeline matches. Gulf War, 91st Ranger Battalion, officer who made decisions that got soldiers killed and walked away with a promotion. I'm pulling his complete file now, everything we have. Maddox, if Stone is involved in this, we're not dealing with a simple corruption case. We're dealing with something that goes deep, very deep. Diana watched the shadows lengthen across the abandoned parking lot. The sun was setting. In a few hours, it would be dark. In a few more hours, her night shift at the hospital would start without her. Lancaster would notice her absence eventually, would probably fire her when she came back. If she came back. She found she did not care. How deep are we talking, sir? Cole's team was transporting evidence, documents proving fraudulent defense contracts, $2 billion worth over the last 15 years. The kind of fraud that requires institutional support. Pentagon officials signing off on fake invoices. Congressional oversight committees looking the other way. Defense contractors billing for equipment that was never delivered and services that were never performed. And someone at the top coordinating all of it. Stone. That's my working theory. He left the Army at full rank. No scandal, no investigation, clean record. Took a position with Sentinel Defense Solutions 6 months later. Private military contractor. They've had over $8 billion in government contracts since 2015. And according to the documents Cole's team was carrying, about a quarter of that was fraudulent. Diana did the math in her head. $2 billion. That was enough money to buy silence, to buy protection, to buy the kind of resources that could stage an ambush on American soldiers and make it look like a training accident, to buy access to a hospital and the means to inject a paralytic drug into a patient's IV. You think Stone ordered the hit on Cole? I think Stone ordered the ambush. The hospital attempt was probably his people trying to clean up loose ends. Cole's the only witness who can testify that Stone personally signed those transport orders. Without Cole, the evidence chain breaks. The case falls apart. $2 billion in fraud disappears into the bureaucracy, and Stone walks away clean. Diana's hand tightened on the sat phone. That's not going to happen. No, it's not. But Maddox, I need you to understand what you're protecting here. This is not just about keeping Cole alive. This is about bringing down a conspiracy that goes to the highest levels of the defense establishment. Stone has friends, powerful friends, people who will do anything to keep this buried. How long until you can move Cole somewhere more secure? 48 hours minimum. We need to verify the evidence, build a case that can survive legal challenge, get protection for the other witnesses. Right now, you and Cole are exposed. I'm sorry. It's the best I can do. 48 hours. Copy that, sir. Maddox, one more thing. If they find you, if this goes kinetic, you are authorized to use appropriate force. But understand, these are not foreign combatants. These are American citizens, probably former military. Rules of engagement are different. Diana looked at Cole sleeping on the hospital bed. 19 years old, his whole life ahead of him, if he survived. Sir, with respect, someone tried to murder a soldier in a hospital bed. Someone ambushed and killed 3 Americans on American soil. I don't care what citizenship they hold. They're enemy combatants, and I will treat them as such. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Officially, I did not hear that. Understood, sir. Stay alive, Maddox, and keep that kid alive. That's an order. Rangers lead the way, sir. All the way. The call ended. Diana set the sat phone down and turned her attention to the room. It was time to prepare. Time to turn this abandoned hospital room into a defensible position. Time to do what she had been trained to do 30 years ago and had never truly stopped knowing how to do. She started with the medical supplies, organized them by priority. Hemorrhage control closest to the bed. Airway equipment within arm's reach. IV fluids staged and ready. Pain medications measured and labeled. Everything positioned so she could find it in the dark, by feel, under stress. Then she moved to the tactical assessment. The room had 1 door and 2 windows. The door was solid wood with a working lock. Not great, but better than nothing. The windows were old single-pane glass. Easy to break, easy to breach. She checked the go bag Hawk had given her. Inside, wrapped in a towel, was exactly what she expected. Glock 19, 3 spare magazines, tactical flashlight, fixed blade knife, and at the bottom, broken down into component parts, a Colt AR-15 with 4 30-round magazines. Diana assembled the rifle with practiced efficiency. Muscle memory took over. Hands moving through steps she had performed thousands of times. Upper receiver, lower receiver, bolt carrier group, charging handle. The familiar weight settling into her grip like shaking hands with an old friend. She performed a functions check, charged the weapon, dry fired. Everything worked. Hawk maintained his equipment properly. Always had. Cole stirred on the bed, his eyes opened, focused on Diana, standing by the window with an assault rifle in her hands. He blinked. Okay, he said, so you're definitely a ranger. Diana smiled. It was a small smile, tired, but real. Supply clerk rangers are very thorough about inventory management. Is that what we're calling it? Would you prefer I tell you the truth? That I'm preparing this room for a potential assault by unknown hostiles with military training and institutional support? Cole pushed himself up on the bed, winced. His wounds were still fresh, still painful. Actually, yeah, I would prefer the truth. I'm tired of people lying to me about how much danger I'm in. Diana set the rifle down on the table, within easy reach but not threatening. She pulled a chair over to the bed and sat, eye level with Cole. The way you talk to soldiers, not down to them, with them. The truth is you're in a lot of danger. The people who ambushed your team are the same people who tried to kill you in the hospital. They have resources. They have training. They have inside knowledge of military protocols in medical facilities. And they will try again. Why me? I didn't see anything. I don't know anything. I was just following orders. You're a witness. You can testify that General Stone personally signed the orders that sent you into that ambush. Without you, the evidence is circumstantial. With you, it's a criminal conspiracy. That makes you the most important person in this investigation and the biggest threat to everyone involved. Cole absorbed this, his young face trying to process information that was too big, too dark, too far outside his experience. How many people are involved? Don't know yet. Could be a handful, could be dozens. Defense contractors, Pentagon officials, maybe congressional staffers. The kind of conspiracy that requires a lot of people looking the other way and a few people actively participating. And we're just sitting here, waiting for them to find us? We're not waiting, we're preparing. There's a difference. Waiting is passive, preparing is active. Right now, I'm turning this room into a place where two people can hold off a dozen attackers long enough for help to arrive. That's not waiting, that's tactics. Diana stood and moved to the windows, started explaining her plan, not because Cole needed to know, but because explaining it helped her refine it, and because keeping Cole engaged kept him from dwelling on the fear. These windows are our weak points, old glass, easy breach. So we're going to set up early warning. I've got motion sensors in the bag. We'll place them outside, create a perimeter. Anyone approaches, we'll know 30 seconds before they're at the door. She moved to the door. This is our choke point, single entry. We funnel them through here. I'll take primary position behind the bed. You'll be on the floor behind that cabinet, protected but mobile. If I go down, you grab the Glock and you shoot anyone who comes through that door who isn't wearing a uniform. I've never shot anyone before. Diana looked at him, held his eyes. You will if you have to, and you'll live with it after, just like the rest of us. She spent the next hour fortifying the room, moving furniture to create barriers, staging equipment for quick access, running through scenarios in her head. What if they breached from the windows? What if they came through the door? What if they used explosives? What if they used gas? For every what if, she had a response. Not perfect, but workable. The kind of improvised defense that came from years of experience in places where the perfect solution did not exist, and the workable solution was the difference between living and dying. Cole watched her work. His expression shifted from scared to fascinated to something like respect. How long were you a ranger? 22 years. Enlisted in '89, Gulf War in '91, Iraq from 2003 to 2007. Got pushed out in 2014. Pushed out how? Diana paused in her work, considered how much to tell him, decided that if they were going to potentially die together, he deserved the full story. There was a mission, hostage rescue. Rules of engagement were strict. We could only shoot if directly engaged. But the hostages were being executed while we watched. 7 civilians, men, women, children, being killed one by one while we sat in overwatch and waited for permission to engage. She sat down on the edge of the bed, not looking at Cole, looking at something far away and long ago. I made a decision. I eliminated the threats. 3 hostiles, 3 shots, saved 7 lives, violated a direct order. The review board decided I was too aggressive, too willing to interpret ROE creatively. They said I lacked the judgment for operational roles, gave me a choice: leave service or accept reassignment to medical-only duties. No combat operations, no weapons, no command. You chose to stay. I had a daughter to support, a husband with PTSD who couldn't hold a job. I needed the pension, so I took the deal, spent 11 years pretending to be something I wasn't, until last night when I couldn't pretend anymore. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The hostages, the 7 people, they're alive because you broke the rules." "Yes. And the 3 soldiers who died in my team, they're dead because someone else broke different rules." Diana looked at him, saw the understanding in his young eyes. The realization that rules were just tools, that following them blindly could be as destructive as breaking them carelessly, that real judgment was knowing the difference. Stone broke rules for money, Diana said. I broke rules for lives. That's the difference. That's the only difference that matters. Her sat phone buzzed. Message from Hayes. Brief. Encrypted. She read it twice. What? Cole asked. Hayes pulled Stone's file. Since 2015, Sentinel Defense Solutions has been involved in 47 military contracts. 23 of them are currently under investigation for fraud. Stone personally signed off on all 23. If the evidence holds, we're looking at the biggest defense contractor fraud case in American history. How big? Over $20 billion, with a B. Cole whistled softly. No wonder they're trying to kill me. $20 billion buys a lot of silence, buys a lot of assassins, buys a lot of people willing to look the other way while soldiers die. Diana stood and walked back to the window. The sun had fully set now, darkness spreading across the abandoned complex like spilled ink. The security team outside had switched on portable lights. 2 men patrolling. Not enough to stop a determined assault. Just enough to provide early warning. Her phone buzzed again. Different number. She frowned and answered. Maddox. Sister, Hawk's voice. Tense, urgent. We have a problem. Diana's entire body went on alert. Talk to me. I just got a call from Travis. You know Travis? Ghost McAllister? Marine Corps, 68 years old, meaner than a rattlesnake? I know Ghost. What about him? He was contacted 2 hours ago. Someone offered him $20,000 to provide intel on your location. Said it was a security test. Said you were running a training exercise and they needed to verify response protocols. Diana's blood went cold. He didn't take it. Hell no, he didn't take it. But he called the rest of the guard. We've been making calls, comparing notes. Turns out 6 of us got contacted in the last 4 hours. All the same offer, all the same cover story. Someone's fishing for your location, Di, and they're fishing hard. Did anyone take the money? Not from our group. But Di, there are a lot of vets out there who are desperate, who need the money, who might not ask too many questions if someone waves 20 grand in their face. Whoever's looking for you, they're casting a wide net. Diana processed this, analyzed it, saw the implications spreading out like cracks in ice. They know I'm with Cole. They know I'm Rangers. They're using that to find me, reaching out to the veteran community, offering money, exploiting the network. That's my read, which means you need to move, now, before someone takes that offer and gives up your position. I can't move Cole. He's not stable enough, and I don't have secure transport. Then you need backup, real backup, not just 2 guards who are going to fold the second things get serious. Diana looked at Cole, then at the rifle on the table, then back out the window at the darkness, calculating, planning, seeing the board as it was, not as she wished it to be. How many of the guard can you mobilize? Hawk's laugh was short and hard. All of us, every single one of us has been waiting for years for someone to need us again, for someone to remember that we still matter. You say the word, Di, and we'll be there. I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This is not a training exercise. This is not a security job. This is defense against people who are willing to kill to protect $20 billion in fraud. People with resources, people with training, people who will not hesitate. Di, we're all between 60 and 73 years old. We've got bad knees, worse backs, and nothing to lose. We've been dying slowly in retirement homes, in VA hospitals while the world forgets we exist. You're offering us a chance to matter one more time, to be useful, to be soldiers again. You think any of us are going to turn that down? Diana closed her eyes, saw in her mind the faces of the men Hawk was talking about. Travis Ghost McAllister, Marine Corps, 68 years old, 3 tours in the first Gulf War, Purple Heart, Silver Star, spent the last decade in a wheelchair, slowly drinking himself to death because no one needed him anymore. William Iron Ashford, Army, 71 years old, 2 tours in Desert Storm, expert in urban warfare. Living alone in a studio apartment, his Army pension barely covering rent, spending his days watching TV and waiting to die. James Wheels Donovan, 73 years old, Navy corpsman, 5 deployments, lost the use of his legs to an IED in Fallujah, spent his days volunteering at the VA because the alternative was sitting at home staring at walls. Gray-haired veterans whose bodies told stories of wars their country preferred to forget. Men in their 60s and 70s who'd been written off as relics, but still moved with purpose. The kind of soldiers who'd been told they were obsolete until someone needed saving. And all of them still soldiers, still capable, still willing to fight when someone needed fighting for. Hawk, if I call the guard, people are going to die. Maybe them, maybe us, probably both. We're dying anyway, die. At least this way we die doing something that matters. Die protecting someone who needs protecting. Die as rangers instead of forgotten old men in forgotten old rooms. Diana opened her eyes, made the decision. V, a hospital, south entrance, 0200 hours, full tactical loadout. This is not a drill. This is not a training exercise. This is the real thing. We'll be there, all of us. Hawk, I need you to understand, I can't guarantee we'll win. Can't guarantee anyone survives. The only thing I can guarantee is that we'll make them pay for every inch. We'll make them remember that old does not mean harmless, that experience beats youth, that Rangers never quit. Hawk's voice was steady, certain, the voice of a man who had made peace with his own mortality a long time ago and was just waiting for a good reason to spend what was left. All the way, sister. We'll see you at 0200. The call ended. Diana stood in the dark room, looking out at the night, knowing that in 6 hours, everything was going to change. In 6 hours, 7 old soldiers were going to make their last stand. Not because they had to, but because someone finally needed them to. She turned to Cole. He was watching her with wide eyes. What just happened? Reinforcements. 6 combat veterans. All of them older than dirt. All of them more dangerous than they look. They'll be here in 6 hours. Can we trust them? Diana smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what was coming and had stopped being scared of it a long time ago. With my life, with yours, with everything that matters. These men are Rangers, and Rangers don't leave Rangers behind. The next 6 hours passed in a strange suspension of time. Diana slept in shifts, 45 minutes at a time, the way she had learned to sleep in combat zones. Light enough to wake at any unusual sound, deep enough to actually rest. Cole tried to sleep but mostly lay awake, staring at the ceiling, processing everything that had happened and everything that was about to happen. At midnight, Diana checked the perimeter. The security team was still there, still alert, but they were just 2 men. And 2 men could not stop what was coming. At 1 a.m., her sat phone buzzed. Message from Hayes. Brief, direct. Intel suggests attack imminent. Stone's people are moving. ETA unknown. Reinforcements requested. Can you hold? Diana typed back. Reinforcements en route. Will hold position. Advise air support on standby. Copy. Godspeed, Maddox. At 1:30 a.m., Diana heard the vehicles. 3 of them. Old trucks, modified for cargo. No lights. They parked near the south entrance and 6 men got out. Diana grabbed the rifle and went downstairs to meet them. They were everything she remembered and nothing like she expected. Old, gray-haired, moving with the careful deliberation of people whose bodies had been used hard and were held together by willpower and spite. But their eyes were clear, their hands were steady, and every single one of them was armed. Travis Ghost McAllister in his wheelchair, a shotgun across his lap. William Iron Ashford with a rifle that looked older than he was. James Wheels Donovan, with a sidearm and a look that said he had been waiting for this moment for years. Daniel Doc Lawrence with a medical bag that probably contained more weapons than bandages. Samuel Sam Rourke with a scoped rifle and the quiet confidence of a man who had never missed what he aimed at. Patrick Patch Fitzgerald with a breaching kit and scars that told stories he had stopped telling years ago. And Hawk, standing in the middle of them all, looking at Diana with an expression that said everything words could not. "The last guard," he said, "reporting for duty." Diana looked at them. These old men who should have been home in bed, who should have been safe, who should have been anywhere except here, preparing to fight a battle that was not theirs and did not need to be. But they were here anyway, because she had called, because a soldier needed help, because Rangers did not retire. They just waited for the next mission. "Gentlemen," Diana said, "thank you for coming. What I'm about to ask you to do is dangerous, probably illegal, definitely going to hurt. The people coming for us are professionals, former military, well-equipped, well-trained, and absolutely willing to kill to protect their secrets." Ghost spoke up. His voice was rough from decades of smoking and shouting. "Ma'am, with respect, we're all between 60 and 73 years old. We've been in more fights than these kids have had birthdays. We've survived things that would make their training exercises look like summer camp. And we've been waiting for years for someone to need us again. So unless you're going to tell us to go home, save your breath and give us our assignments." Diana smiled, a real smile this time. "All right then, let's turn this abandoned hospital into a fortress. And when they come, let's teach these young punks what real soldiers look like." They worked through the night, setting up defensive positions, running wire for early warning systems, placing improvised obstacles, creating fields of fire, establishing fallback positions. All the things that old soldiers knew how to do because they had done them in real wars where mistakes meant death. By the time the sun started to rise, the building was ready. Not impregnable. Nothing was impregnable, but defensible, layered, with multiple choke points and overlapping fire zones, and enough nasty surprises to make any assault team think twice. Diana gathered them in the main hallway. 7 old soldiers and 1 young private, the most unlikely fighting force she had ever commanded. "Listen up," she said. "They're coming. We don't know when. We don't know how many. But they're coming. Our job is to hold this position until reinforcements arrive. Keep Cole alive. Keep each other alive. And make damn sure that anyone who comes through those doors remembers that old soldiers are still soldiers." Ghost raised his shotgun. "I've been waiting to die useful for 10 years. Today's as good a day as any." Iron nodded. "My wife died 5 years ago. My kids don't call. I got nothing waiting for me at home except an empty apartment and daytime TV. I'd rather go out fighting than fade away watching game shows." Wheels checked his sidearm. "Been in this chair since Fallujah. Been useless since Fallujah. Today I get to be useful again. That's worth whatever comes next." One by one, they voiced their commitment, not because they were suicidal, not because they wanted to die, but because they had all reached the same conclusion, that dying for something was better than living for nothing, that being useful one last time was worth the risk, that mattering was more important than surviving. Diana felt something in her chest, something she had not felt in 11 years. Pride, purpose, the bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was supposed to do. "All right then," she said, "let's show them what the last guard looks like." At 0730 hours, the motion sensors triggered. Diana was on the second floor with Cole when the alert came through. 3 vehicles, 12 personnel, professional spacing, tactical approach, not rushing, not panicking, just moving with the kind of confidence that came from superior numbers and superior equipment. She keyed her radio. All positions, we have contact. 12 hostiles approaching from the east. Stand by. The responses came back quick and calm. Ghost in position at the south entrance. Iron covering the north approach. Wheels holding the stairwell. Doc with Cole. Sam on overwatch with his rifle. Patch ready to reinforce wherever needed. Hawk coordinating from the command post they had set up in what used to be a nursing station. Diana moved to the window, watched the assault team approach. They were good, professional, moving in a textbook assault formation, which meant they had training, which meant they had done this before, which meant this was going to be bad. She keyed her radio again. They're professionals, former military, probably contractors. They will try to breach multiple entry points simultaneously. Do not engage until my command. Let them commit. Let them get close. Then we light them up. The assault team reached the building, split into 3 groups. 4 at the south entrance, 4 at the north, 4 holding back as reserve. Diana watched them set breaching charges, watched them stack up, watched them prepare to flood the building with overwhelming force. She took a breath, steadied her hands on the rifle, remembered every lesson she had ever learned about combat, about violence, about the moment when everything stops being theoretical and starts being real. All positions, she said into the radio. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, execute. The world exploded. The south entrance breaching charge detonated with a sound that shook the building's foundations. Concrete dust billowed through the hallways. The assault team moved fast, professional, flowing through the breach like water. They ran straight into Ghost McAllister. The wheelchair was positioned exactly where Diana had told him to position it, behind a corner, out of sight from the entry point, perfectly angled for enfilade fire down the hallway. Ghost's shotgun roared, once, twice, 3 times. The confined space turned the sound into something physical. The lead contractor went down. The second stumbled. The third tried to return fire and caught Iron Ashford's rifle round from the stairwell above. Contact south, Ghost's voice crackled over the radio. 3 down, 1 retreating. At the north entrance, the second team fared no better. Wheels Donovan had rigged the doorway with tripwires connected to medical equipment. Not enough to kill, just enough to tangle, to slow, to make them easy targets. Sam Rourke's scoped rifle spoke from his overwatch position. 1 round, 1 kill. Precision at 70 meters through a building. The kind of shot you didn't make unless you'd been making shots like that for 50 years. Diana watched from the 2nd floor window, counted the bodies, tracked the movement. The assault team had expected resistance. They had not expected this, had not expected veterans who moved like ghosts and shot like they'd been born with rifles in their hands. 4 down, she said into the radio. 8 remaining. Reserve element moving to flank from the west. Patch, you're up. Patrick Fitzgerald had positioned himself exactly for this moment. The reserve team thought they were being clever, circling around to hit an undefended flank. Instead, they walked into a textbook ambush. Patch's breaching charges, repurposed as improvised claymores, shredded the lead elements. The survivors fell back, disorganized, into Sam's overlapping fields of fire. 2 more down. The assault was falling apart. What should have been a quick, overwhelming strike had turned into a meat grinder. The contractors were good, but they were fighting an enemy they didn't understand. Old men who knew every trick because they'd invented half of them. Diana keyed her radio. 6 down, 6 remaining. They're regrouping at the vehicles. Expect indirect fire or withdrawal. She was wrong on both counts. What came next was something she hadn't anticipated. A single figure emerged from the remaining contractors. Tall, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. He walked forward alone, hands raised, no weapon visible. Diana's scope found his face, and she remembered. General Nathaniel Stone, 25 years older than the last time she'd seen him. Gulf War, 1991. The officer who'd given the order that killed half her unit because taking the cautious route would have delayed his promotion timeline. The officer she'd reported. The officer who'd made sure she never held command again. Stone's voice carried across the parking lot, amplified. He was using a megaphone. "Staff Sergeant Maddox, I know you're in there. I know what you're thinking, that you can hold out until help arrives. But help isn't coming. I've made sure of that." Diana's finger tightened on the trigger. One shot, one less problem. But she didn't take it, because Stone was here for a reason, and she needed to know what it was. Stone continued, "I'm going to make this simple. Send out Private Cole, and the rest of you walk away. You've got my word. No pursuit, no charges. You disappear, I disappear, and we all forget this happened." Ghost's voice came over the radio. "Ma'am, permission to disregard that bullshit and shoot him?" "Negative. Hold fire. Let him talk." Stone paced slowly, performance for an audience. "You cost me my career once, Maddox. Reported me for making hard calls in hard situations. They didn't court-martial me, but they didn't promote me either. Stuck at general. Forced retirement at 20 years. He stopped, looked directly at the window where Diana was positioned. "But I learned something. The system doesn't reward soldiers. It rewards businessmen. So I became a businessman, and I've been very successful. More successful than I ever would have been in uniform. And I'm not letting some washed-up ranger and a traumatized kid ruin that." Diana's radio crackled. Cole's voice, weak but steady. "Maddox, I'll go. Let them take me. These men don't need to die for me." "Negative, Cole. You're staying right where you are." Stone checked his watch. "You've got 2 minutes to decide. After that, things get unpleasant. I've got reinforcements coming. 20 more contractors, heavy weapons. I'll level this building if I have to." Diana keyed her radio. "Hawk." "Yes, sister?" "You see what I see? Big man with a big mouth making big threats. Standard officer bullshit. He's lying about the reinforcements. If he had 20 more contractors, he'd have brought them from the start. This is his entire team, and we just cut it in half." "Agreed. What's the play?" Diana smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We're Rangers. We don't negotiate with people who murder soldiers. We make them regret ever hearing our names." She stood, moved away from the window, slung her rifle, pulled out the Glock. "All positions, hold your sectors. I'm going out there." "Die, that's insane." Hawk's voice had an edge of panic. "He'll kill you the second you step outside." "No, he won't, because he's an officer. And officers always think they're the smartest person in the room. He wants to talk. So I'm going to let him talk, right up until the moment I put a bullet in his head." Before anyone could argue, Diana was moving, down the stairs, through the hallway, to the south entrance where Ghost sat in his wheelchair, shotgun ready. "Ma'am, this is a bad idea." "Most of my ideas are, Ghost. Cover the door. If this goes wrong, fall back to secondary positions." She stepped outside, hands visible, Glock in her right hand, pointed at the ground. Non-threatening, but not disarmed. Stone smiled. There she is, the hero of Memorial Regional Hospital, saved a kid's life and can't let it go. Diana walked forward, slow, controlled, measuring distances. 12 contractors had become 6. Stone made 7. Those were better odds than most of the fights she'd won. "Stone, you look old." "We all do, Maddox. That's what happens when you survive long enough to spend the money." They stopped 15 feet apart. Diana could see the contractors fanning out at the edges of her peripheral vision, trying to get angles, trying to box her in. She didn't care, because while they were focused on her, they weren't watching the building, weren't seeing Sam Rourke shift position to have overlapping fields of fire on all of them. "You killed 3 soldiers for money," Diana said, "then tried to kill a 4th in a hospital bed. That doesn't sound like hard calls in hard situations. That sounds like murder." Stone's smile faded. "You don't understand how the world works. Never did. You think service matters, honor matters, doing the right thing matters. But it doesn't. The only thing that matters is power, and power comes from money. Is that what you told yourself in the Gulf War? When you ordered my unit into that village without proper recon? When half of us died because you wanted the glory of being first in? Ancient history, Maddox. I made a tactical decision. People died. That's war. You just couldn't accept it. Had to file your little report. Had to be the righteous crusader. And where did it get you? 11 years stocking bandages in a supply closet. Diana's voice went quiet, deadly. It got me here, with you, finally. Stone's hand moved toward his sidearm. He was fast for a 61-year-old man. Diana was faster. The Glock came up. 2 shots, both center mass. Stone staggered back, surprise on his face. He'd expected negotiations, expected more talk, expected the rules to protect him one more time. The rules had stopped applying the moment he tried to murder Cole. The contractors opened fire. Diana was already moving, diving behind Stone's vehicle as rounds sparked off metal and shattered glass. Her radio crackled with overlapping voices. "Contact! All positions engage!" The building erupted. Every window that had a last guard member behind it suddenly had a muzzle flash. The contractors, caught in the open, caught in overlapping fields of fire, went down fast. Diana stayed behind the vehicle, reloaded, counted shots, waited for the specific silence that meant it was over. It came 30 seconds later. Hawk's voice on the radio. "Threats neutralized. All hostiles down." Diana stood, surveyed the parking lot. 7 bodies, including Stone, who was still alive but wouldn't be much longer. She walked over to him, knelt down. His eyes found hers, blood on his lips. "You can't win. This is bigger than me." "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it. They'll destroy you. Everything you've built, everyone you've saved." Diana leaned close. "I'm a ranger, Stone. We don't build, we fight, and we don't stop fighting until the mission is complete." Stone's eyes went unfocused. His breathing stopped. Diana stood, keyed her radio. "All positions, sound off." One by one, the last guard reported. Minor injuries, nothing serious. Every single one of them still combat effective. 7 old men had just fought off 12 professional contractors in one. Because experience beat youth. Because discipline beat arrogance. Because Rangers never quit. Diana walked back into the building, found Cole on the 2nd floor, protected by Doc Lawrence, staring at her with something like awe. "Is it over?" For now, her sat phone rang. "Hayes. Maddox, we're tracking multiple emergency calls from your location. What's your status?" 7 hostiles KIA, including General Stone. 0 friendly casualties. Building secure. Cole is safe. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "You killed Stone." "He drew first. It was self-defense." "That's going to be a hell of a report to write." "Then you better get started, sir, because in about 10 minutes, every law enforcement agency in the state is going to be converging on this position. And I'd really prefer if they knew we were the good guys before they showed up." Hayes laughed. It was a tired sound, relieved. "FBI is already en route. ETA 10 minutes. I'll make sure they know." "Maddox?" "Sir, you did good. Stone's dead. His network is rolling up as we speak. 47 arrests in the last 6 hours. Senators, Pentagon officials, defense contractors. You broke the whole thing open." "We did it, sir. Me and 6 old men who the world forgot about." "The world won't forget them anymore." The call ended. Diana looked at the last guard assembled in the hallway, battered, exhausted, alive, and smiling, because for the first time in years, they'd mattered. Epilogue, 6 weeks later. The Veterans Affairs Medical Center looked different now. Fresh paint, new equipment, government funding that had materialized overnight once the scandal broke and Congress needed to prove they supported veterans. Diana stood in front of her classroom. 20 young medics, military and civilian, all listening with the kind of intensity that came from knowing the person teaching them had actually done everything they were learning. The sign outside her door read, Combat Medic Training Program, Director, Diana Maddox, R.N. She was teaching trauma response, real trauma response, the kind you couldn't learn from textbooks. Most of you will never see combat, she said, but someday you'll face a situation where everything goes wrong, where the patient is dying, where protocol doesn't work, where you have to make a choice. A young medic raised her hand. Ma'am, how do you make that choice? Diana looked at her, saw herself 30 years ago. Young, certain, not yet broken by the things she would see and do. You make the choice that lets you sleep at night. You save the life. You do what's right, and you accept whatever comes after. Class ended. The medics filed out. Diana gathered her materials. Through the window, she could see Hawk waiting in the parking lot. They had coffee every Thursday. The last guard had their weekly meeting every Thursday too. 7 old soldiers who had remembered what it meant to matter. Emily Bradford appeared in the doorway, the young nurse from Memorial Regional. She'd transferred to the VA 3 weeks ago. Ms. Maddox, I heard about what happened, about the everything. Are you okay? Diana considered the question. Lancaster had fired her, of course. The hospital had wanted to press charges. But then the FBI had explained what she'd actually been doing. And suddenly Memorial Regional had decided to quietly let the matter drop. I'm better than okay, Emily. For the first time in 11 years, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Diana drove home that evening in Hawk's truck. Her apartment was still small, still sparse, but the photos on the mantle told a different story now. A new photo had joined the others. 7 old soldiers standing in front of the VA hospital. The last guard, gray-haired, scarred, smiling with the kind of pride that came from knowing they'd mattered one more time. Her phone buzzed. Text from her daughter, Sarah. Heard about Colorado. Heard what you did. I'm proud of you, Mom. Always have been. Diana stared at the message. Typed back. Thank you. Stay safe out there. She set the phone down, looked at the photos. Her husband would never know what she'd become. But maybe, in some way, she'd finally made peace with the person she'd had to be to survive him. Lancaster had been wrong. She wasn't obsolete, wasn't a liability, wasn't too old to matter. She was a ranger, and rangers never quit. From the news on TV, a reporter's voice. In what prosecutors are calling the largest defense fraud case in American history, 47 individuals, including former General Nathaniel Stone, were indicted today on charges ranging from fraud to conspiracy to murder. Stone was killed during an attempted assault on a federal witness. The key witness, Private Jackson Cole, testified for 6 hours today. Diana turned off the TV. She'd heard enough. Cole was alive. Stone was dead. The system had worked, eventually, because people had refused to let it fail. She looked at her hands. Still steady, still capable, still a ranger's hands. Outside, the Nevada sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and red. The helicopter sounds from the nearby base drifted through her window. Once that sound had made her freeze, made her remember. Now it just sounded like home. They called her old, outdated, a relic. But old meant experienced. Outdated meant proven. Relic meant survivor. And survivors had stories to tell. Stories about 7 old soldiers who refused to fade away quietly, who proved that age meant wisdom, not weakness, who showed the world what real warriors looked like. The last guard would meet again next Thursday. New members were always welcome. Veterans who felt forgotten, who needed purpose, who wanted to matter. Because Rangers didn't retire, they just waited for the next mission. And Diana Maddox was exactly where she belonged, teaching, leading, building something that would last long after she was gone. Lancaster had said she wasn't a soldier anymore. He was right. She wasn't a soldier. She was something better. She was a ranger. And rangers lead the way, all the way.